In today's episode, Adrienne Hill is going to show you how she gets paid to generate leads. So stick around. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Digital Trailblazers. We are super excited to have one of our dearest friends on the show with us today. Adrienne Hill is a lovely human being, and she's an incredibly gifted marketer and businesswoman. And she's doing some amazing stuff when it comes to lead generation that we definitely wanted to bring you and have her dive all into. So, Adrienne, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's always great being with the Digital Trailblazer family.
Yay. Thank you. So just for a little context before we get into all the juicy stuff we're going to dive into, can you give people a little context on who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Adrienne Hill, and I've been running an online business for going on 10 years now, although arguably the first 6 of those, I jokingly say that I was riding the struggle bus to Hot Mess City over and over again. It took me a while to really get my bearings. But prior to starting an online business, I actually had a 20-year career working in corporate America, where I managed multi-million-dollar launches for billion-dollar brands. So that was my frame of reference. That was my zone of genius. So then when I pivoted into the online space, clearly the first handful of years, I hadn't really found my voice in that world yet. And I hadn't quite yet translated everything I learned from corporate into that world. But when I finally had that moment where I realized I needed to blend the two, I asked myself, okay, as someone who's managed all of these large, complicated launches for literally decades, if I tried to recreate the version of that in an online business, what would that look like? And that's when everything changed for me. And no sooner did I kind of activate the key strategy that we're going to be talking about today and started consistently earning 6 figures every 6 months like clockwork.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. And I think this is a really important discussion for everybody who is looking to build an online business, because even when you do things right, you set up a great foundation for your business. You've got a great sales system and process. You've got everything really dialed in. Your messaging is on point. The one thing you always keep having to work on or keep it like active is lead generation. You always have to be reaching new people to get them into the funnel, to keep your pipeline full and to have consistent sales and revenue coming through. So traffic, leads, this is a huge topic that everyone needs to really take seriously. And you do something really, really cool. And so let's dive into it. So lay it on us. Like, what is your strategy? How do you actually earn money and generate really good, high quality leads at the same time?
Yeah. So really quickly, I just want to distinguish, I might look at lead generation and traffic slightly differently than other people do. So just to give you a little context, we've all heard the term traffic, and the reason they call it that is because if you imagine a freeway with all the traffic flowing by, there's nonstop people. There's a big difference, though, between the traffic on a freeway and the traffic on a country road, right? Not all traffic is the same, number one. And I view lead generation as it's the literal mechanism that turns that traffic into a lead for you. So, for example, it's kind of like the off-ramp on the freeway, or the driveway that pulls into someone's yard. You can have lead generation mechanisms set up and get 0 leads because you have 0 traffic. Similarly, you can be plugged into a great source of traffic, but if you don't have the lead generation mechanism, you can't collect lead. So they're 2 distinctly different things, yet they're closely connected. So my issue was traffic. I had all the lead generation mechanisms set up. I had great lead magnets. I had great, launch funnels and all these things, but I had an empty room. You can't sell to an empty room. So what I ended up doing, spoiler alert, if we're going to just cut right to the heart of this, I started tapping into virtual conferences, or what some people call virtual summits, as a new traffic source. And that's when everything changed for me.
That's awesome. So take us to the first time you went through this, because this is definitely a learning curve. And well, first define it before we get into that, because I think probably this might be a new term or idea for some people.
Yeah. So a lot of people are familiar with in-person conferences, right? You sign up for the conference, you go, there's multiple speakers. Sometimes even those multiple speakers are happening simultaneously. So you have to choose which stage you're going to go to and who you're going to listen to. And they're great. They're fantastic for giving people epiphanies, new motivation, new strategies, networking, all of the above. But an in-person conference is really difficult to plan because everyone's traveling there. Now you need hotel rooms. You need meeting spaces. It is crazy expensive. A virtual summit is very much the same. There's a panel of speakers bringing their expertise to the table, and they're all speaking at various times about their area of expertise, except in this case, that's all happening virtually. And so it's the exact same concept, but instead of physical stages in different physical rooms in this conference center, it's virtual stages on different funnel pages inside of a pre-built funnel.
Yeah. And so explain to the audience, how do you actually make money generating the lead? Because when people think about lead gen, they think about how much, especially if they get in paid traffic, how much it's going to cost them per lead and all of that kind of stuff. So this is a really unique strategy because you've taken this virtual conference idea and you're using it to earn on the front end before you're even selling your offer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my favorite part about it, is that you get paid to generate leads. And then if you want to, you can repurpose that money into paid ads. Or you can just keep it. I mean, that's always fun too, right? So yeah, the way this works is you set up your panel of speakers for your conference, and you kind of have a planned agenda of when they're going to speak. And you build the sign up page where people can kind of learn about the event, shop through the speakers, see what's going to be covered, and sign up, of course. So signing up itself is free. So it's a free event to attend. And every single speaker on the speaker panel is inviting all of their social media followers and everybody on their email list. So you're not having to generate the traffic yourself. You're borrowing other people's audiences, right? So there's no paid ads. There's no hustle and grind. There's just giving promotional materials to the speakers and then sitting back and watching the leads flow in. Now, where the money comes from is you get tons of signups because it's free and it's amazing and it's easy to attend. But as soon as they sign up for free, they're offered a very low cost, easy to say yes to VIP ticket. And so because it's so low cost, and it usually includes things like some interactive workbooks that you can use and take notes with, it includes all the session recordings. Maybe it has the audio files for those who prefer to just listen to the audio, but it also includes access to a whole plethora of free gifts that the speakers are offering to the audience. And so roughly 5 to 10% of people who sign up for the conference overall will upgrade to that VIP ticket. And so it's really easy to create a membership site that has replays of the sessions. That is not hard to do. So for very little work, you're able to sell this VIP ticket that on average 5 to 10% of people buy, which depending on the size of your event, you could have a 3-speaker conference or you could have a 33-speaker conference. That's where you can get paid anywhere from $5 to $10 per lead overall, as you look at the conversion metrics of how many people are buying that VIP ticket. So on average, I earn between $2,000 and maybe $10,000 simply hosting the event. And that's before I even try to sell my primary offer to anyone.
Yeah, that's nice because, that's just hosting the event and you're not even doing the training. Like everybody else is providing the content, they're providing the traffic. And the nice thing about that traffic is that it's all warm traffic. Right. I think that's the best part about this, is that this is all warm traffic coming in. And so the marketing is a lot easier to do. And I think people who've never really had to generate traffic, like they're getting referrals or they're doing networking, and they've never really generated serious traffic. They don't realize just how much more advantageous that is to have warm traffic coming in that's already mostly pre-sold on the idea of buying and joining. That is so super powerful. And now all those people that are joining this summit are now on your email list. And so not only have you generated that upfront cash, but now you've got a whole, thousands of people that you can market to your own offers after the summit. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the last 4 years of activating this strategy, and I was activating from scratch. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of sales under my belt when I hosted my first event. And it has become the bread and butter of my business. I do one per quarter, every quarter, like clockwork. And what ended up happening is I went from an email list of about 400, which it took me the first 4 years to get 400 people on my list, to 4 years later, just shy of 17,000. So it was a massive jump. And like you mentioned, it's not 17,000 freebie seekers. It's the people who attend these events they're problem aware and they're shopping for a solution to their problem amongst that speaker lineup. And they're going, oh, I have to attend this session. I think this is what I've been looking for. That one is a close second. Okay, that's it. I'm signing up. Like, I think my next strategy is somewhere in this mix. So mentally, in terms of what's going through their mind, they're actively problem aware. They're shopping for a solution to their problem. And they're signing up specifically because they see a session they think is going to solve that problem, which means they're showing up with an intention to action someone's strategy, which means buying their program or signing up for their course or their coaching or mentorship or whatever that is. So the sheer mentality of what's going on in the mind of someone who signs up for one of these events is so different versus like running paid ads to cold traffic. They might just be filling dead time in their day before a dentist appointment or something. Like, very different mentality, right? So yeah, in that time, I went from about 400 leads to about 17,000, and I went from zero money to bringing in over $1 million.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And you only do this 4 times a year.
Yeah.
So, and how long do these summits last? Like, is it a week long or 2 weeks long? How long do you have to, how long are you working for each one of these summits that you do?
That's a multifaceted question. Let me start by saying you can do a simple one-day summit that has maybe 6 to 8 speakers, and it's quick and easy to plan. But of course, it's going to have a lower number of leads flowing in because there's only 6 to 8 people promoting. When people do their very first summit, I like to tell them to plan for roughly 20 to 30 speakers, however many it takes to give them a reach of over 100,000 people is kind of generally where we tell people to start. But even then, I've kind of settled into this sweet spot where for the events that we run once a quarter, we always have a 15-speaker panel, and it's 3 speakers a day for 5 days. It's 1 week. It's clean. It's easy. You're in and out. And actually, the majority of the work, you can actually outsource to your team. You don't even have to be the one doing the work if you've grown your business to the point that you have contractors or employees working for you.
I mean, I think that whole concept of being able to just work for a little bit 4 times a year and pull in multiple 6 figures, if not 7 figures, that's amazing. So this whole concept of bringing in a bunch of people, you're all mixing your lists together. I think one of the things that people may have a concern about is, well, if I promote this to my list, well, now they're getting exposed to a bunch of my competitors. And rather than buy from me, they're going to buy from somebody else, right? How would you address that concern?
Yeah. So what I advise doing is to invite speakers onto your panel who they serve the same audience you do, but in a very different way. So for example, I serve business owners and entrepreneurs. I, help them start and launch and scale their businesses. And so anyone who serves the entrepreneurial audience I could potentially invite. But I make sure I invite speakers who teach a facet of business building that I have no desire to teach. Like someone who teaches LinkedIn. I kind of hate social media. So basically anyone who teaches any social media platform, go ahead, take people, because I'm never going to teach LinkedIn or TikTok or Facebook or whatever. And so you invite people who serve the same audience, but in a very different way. So you're more collaborative, not competitive. So then, you can't really lose a client to someone who teaches something that you're never going to teach.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing, because we've worked with, thousands and thousands of people, almost everyone that comes into our program has already bought from somebody else before. It very, very seldom do we ever bring someone in or even talk to somebody who's never bought anything else in the past. In my opinion, even though you are promoting something to your list where, they may be getting exposed to other people that they may buy things from, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing they're ever going to buy.
Right.
Right.
They may buy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like when I think about how many different programs we've bought and even just how many coaches that we've hired in our business, it's like every year we're hiring a new coach. Every year we're buying dozens of new programs, even at our level of business. Like it doesn't stop. But I do like that concept of you're pulling people into the summit that are like very niche specific, right? They're tackling a different aspect of your subject matter that is not competitive. It's collaborative. Now, I guess one of the other questions would be, your whole idea here, is this that you have to be the organizer of these all the time, or could you just participate in these?
You can do both. So what I often find every time I host one of these, I end up getting invited. A lot of the other speakers, we end up getting to know each other. We end up making friends with each other. Now we're networked together. And inevitably, I end up speaking on a handful of their podcasts and vice versa. And there's all kinds of like networking and collaborating going on. So I host them, but I also speak in them because I believe in them, right? And what I tell my clients is, listen, anytime you speak in one of these, you get a slice of the pie. There's always a certain number of the leads in that event who are going to grab your free gift, your download, jump on your email list. But when you host it, you get the whole pie. I don't know about you guys. I like having the whole pie. But technically you can do both. So I host once a quarter, which means 4 times a year I get the whole pie. But then in between, I fill the time in between by speaking on other people's summits, podcasts, platforms, whatever. And so I do both.
So that actually brings up a really important question, I think, is if you have an email list, how often or how frequently can you be promoting a summit, whether it's your summit that you're going to really be hitting up hard for, inviting them to, or even as a guest. So, because as a guest, I've been on a ton of summits as a guest, and it's usually like 3 emails that get sent that we are required to send to our list. So, do you have any recommendation on not like summiting out your list?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I generally, first of all, I always advise when you're promoting something that you're really seriously driving traffic to. You're not sending an email just to check the box and send the email. Like you're trying to fill something. I always advise just promote one thing at a time. The only time I see there being like a failure in promotion delivery or a failure in people getting the number of leads they want is when the speakers on their panel are promoting like 2 or 3 summits at once. Don't ever promote 3 things at once. Like that's just not good email marketing etiquette. So don't do that for sure. I think maximum, don't promote a summit or a summit-like event more than once a month. It's once a month and everything in between is all your other normal, regular stuff, your newsletter, your trainings, your whatever you got going on. Once a month or so is about right, and probably not more than that. But here's the other interesting thing I've found. Since I started growing a bigger email list and being invited to speak in more things and promote more things, and of course, because I believe in summits, I do regularly speak in them, probably on average once a month. I'm almost always at the top of the leaderboard. And anytime I see anyone else giving me a run for my money on the leaderboard for whether it's an affiliate promotion or a summit or whatever it might be, every time I inquire of them of like what their business is all about, they also build their businesses with summits. Because it's that hot, collaborative, warm traffic that's filling your email list, I found that anything I promote, I'm almost always at the top of the leaderboard as a result. So a lot of people worry that if I leverage summits, my list is going to get like watered down. But if anything, it amps it up as long as you're not exceeding those thresholds of how often you do it.
That's really interesting. I love that. So what types of businesses, we have a lot of coaches and course creators in this audience, but like what niches and things are you seeing that this really works well for? Or are there ones that are like, it's okay, but it's not that great?
Yeah, there's definite like yeses and nos in this space. So that's a great question. If you're any kind of coach who can work with people virtually, this can become your bread and butter all day long. If you are a consultant or you're running an agency and you're looking for high ticket clients, it can be a really great strategy. The times you're not really going to want to use it are when the primary things that you're selling are like low ticket things or physical products. If you're running like an Etsy shop or an Amazon reseller or something, it's not made for the physical product world. It's made more for the coaching, consulting, service delivery kind of world, as long as the service you're delivering can be done virtually. So if you're a social media manager, website builder, copywriter, whatever, where it absolutely does not work, and do not try it, is if the clients that you can serve, if you're limited geographically, you can only serve, people in your home state or certain states because you're only licensed to operate in certain areas or something. And the reason is because when you're hosting a virtual conference like this and you have a panel of, say, 15 speakers from across the country, maybe US and Canada, you're going to get leads from across the country, all across US and Canada. So if you can only operate in your one little geographic area and all of your leads are outside of that area, what's the point, right? So you have to, as long as your business can serve people virtually within a reasonable span of time zones, it's a great strategy for you, especially if you're selling high ticket, not low ticket.
So have you seen it work better or worse for like the fitness industry or wellness or business focused or relationship or personal development or like any of those sort of different kind of areas?
I've seen it work equally well across all of those, honestly. I think it's all fair game at that point. Any industry where people have strong burning pain points or problems they're trying to solve, and there's people out there building a business that can help solve the range of problems for that person, it's fair game. The only time I see it not work well is if you're niched down too far. Like whatever your niche is, you might actually want to go up a level, not down a level. So for example, I kind of use this as a funny example. If you're a coach that teaches underwater basket weaving, there's not like the tiny audience for that, right? You might want to have a summit that's about crafting overall and then try to find the underwater basket weavers from in that audience, right? Like niching down really, really far is actually not a good idea for a summit. You want to be niched in enough that there's a clear purpose, there's a clear focus, there's a clear theme, and it needs to speak to one specific audience. But you don't want to be ultra niched, if that makes sense. But in terms of does one niche do better than another, as long as there's problems to be solved, there's a conference to be had.
Now, I know for us, we've participated as a speaker in multiple of these summits, and every time it seems like we get, at least 2 or 3 clients out of every single one. So even as a participant, I know that it is well worth it for us to join these whenever they come along. But as an organizer, I assume that there's a lot of stuff going on in the background that you need to organize that you don't necessarily have to worry about as a participant. So what does it really take to organize these things? Like, I guess the first question I have is, how do you even find the people and convince them to be a speaker at these summits? Like, how do you even do the reach out and research and find these people?
Yeah. So the first thing you'll need to build out is your speaker sign-up funnel, right? And of course, you need a sign-up page. And just like any sales page or opt-in page, it needs to speak to what's in it for them, right? So, of course, what's in it for you. It's a massive list build. It's all this money. It's great. But you need to frame everything in terms of what's in it for them. So you're going to want to let them know, first of all, who's not honored to say, hey, I want to put you on my virtual stage and put spotlights on you and build your brand and your authority. Like, everyone loves that. Who's going to say no to that, right? So you make sure that you point out that they're going to be featured. They're going to be allowed to promote a lead magnet of choice. They're going to be able to build their brand and authority. You point out the reach that the event is going to have, meaning collectively across all the speakers, if they all have an email list of 5,000 and you have, let's just say 10 of them, you have a reach of 50,000 people, right? And generally speaking, by participating in a collaborative event like this, you're going to tap into a much larger reach than you can get in other ways, simply because the size and scale of the event is multiplied by how many speakers there are. And so you let them know the size of the reach, the benefit to them, which is list build, authority building, credibility building. And then generally speaking, they're happy to sign up. Like they probably have gaps in their promotional calendar that they're looking to fill too. And everyone is looking for a platform to speak on. So I kind of view it as like a podcast on steroids. Like you can get the reach of you plus the podcast host, or you, the summit host, and 20 other people. Like basically take the results you're used to getting and multiply by 20 or 30. And that's what you get from an event like this. So just frame it in terms of what's in it for them. And most people are happy to speak, and probably for the same reason you guys are, right? You're like, wow, we're going to be featured in front of how many people? And we almost always sign 1 or 2 clients out of this. Like, why would we say no? Yeah, as long as you're framing it in terms of what's in it for them, they're generally happy to sign up, as long as it's clear that the audience is a fit for them.
And then as far as like where to find these people, because I know that for us, especially early on in our entrepreneurial journey, like we weren't well networked at all. Like we didn't know, we had a few people that we followed that we kind of knew about, but like other people of our level that we might invite to something like this, like we had no idea. So how do you even go about finding people to invite, or determining whether they got an audience that might be a match, or if they've even got a large enough audience that you want to invite them? How do you go about that stuff?
Yeah. So generally what I do, you kind of have to sit and think about your audience. What are the range of needs that your audience has? And certainly what you can fulfill for them is one point on that range. But what are all the other things that they're looking for, right? So I gave the example before. I love to invite social media strategists who teach how to use various platforms, because I don't want to teach that and my audience loves it. So like for me, I would look in one of my summits is the Social Media Sales Summit, and I find speakers who are experts on each platform, and they explain, here's the strategies that are working best right now on X or, TikTok or whatever. And so then once you kind of have an idea of like, oh, okay, I could look for social media experts, then you just go out to like Instagram, TikTok, maybe even LinkedIn, and you just search Instagram coach, TikTok coach, so-and-so coach, or so-and-so expert or speaker. And you kind of stalk their profiles a little bit, vet them to make sure that they look like they actually know what they're talking about. They're not an imposter of some sort. And it's always a good signal if they have a lead magnet featured somewhere on their profile or in their profile link. If they're not featuring a lead magnet, they may not understand email marketing, which means they may not have an email list. So we always look for that. If we find it, we check out their free gift. Does it look like a high quality landing page? Is it clear they know what they're doing? Or do they look like they're a brand new beginner who's in hot mess city? So you kind of vet them, you stalk them. If they have a funnel, you jump into their funnel and you funnel hack them a little bit, just to make sure that they're legit, that they have high quality content and expertise area. And generally speaking, if they kind of meet those criteria and you like their vibe, of course, you want to make sure you like them, that you think they'd be a good speaker for you. Then, we kind of have scripts that you can use to reach out via email, via social media DMs, however that may look. And then it's really just a conversation from there. But usually you can vet people on the surface, and it's really just searching for them on social media, doing Google searches, checking out YouTube profiles, things like that.
Yeah. I love that tip about looking for the lead magnet, or the link to the lead generation funnel somewhere in their social media, because you're right. If the main purpose here is finding people who have a large email list, they need that to build an email list.
They got to have a lead magnet. Now, here's the flip side of that. My team and I know if we go to their website and all over their website, they're promoting their latest book, we almost never invite them, because once someone becomes a published author, they almost always want to be paid for their speaking gigs. And they're not willing to speak in an event for free in exchange for building their email list. It's this weird dynamic. Every time someone's an author, they almost always want to get paid to speak. So, and what makes the summit so such a no-brainer organic strategy is you want your speaker panel to be willing to speak for free in exchange for the leads that they're going to be getting.
Yeah. In other words, they need to understand marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're not a paid expert speaker who only speaks if they get paid, right? So you want to find people who are big enough to have a good email list, but they're not so big that they're a published author who gets paid thousands of dollars to speak, right? It's that sweet spot in between.
Gotcha. So what are some of the common challenges? Because I know I've definitely run into some folks who've tried summits. Like I know many are crushing it, but I've run into a few that I've honestly been invited to speak on some, which I declined to get into when I inquired a little bit further. So not everyone's crushing it. So what are the problems or the challenges that people are facing when they're trying to work this strategy?
Yeah, this is not a strategy that you want to just wing it and figure it out yourself. Number one. Number two, and I'm not going to say any names because that's not professional. There are some people out there who teach summits horribly. And as a result, the people who learn from them, their summits have some issues. They have cracks in the foundation. So a couple of the issues I see, in order to pull one of these off well, you want to be working with a coach who's giving you all the right page templates, email templates, contract templates. If you wing it, you're probably going to miss some important details. And to pull off a good event, like there's a lot of moving parts, right? So number one, don't wing it. Number two, you really want to make sure that you have to have a certain level of personal leadership. You have to be kind of a structured, organized person. And even if you're not structured and organized, work with a coach who has things so structured and organized that it kind of makes up for your lack of structure, okay? I, of course, teach this strategy. There's other people that do as well, but just make sure as long as you're building out your summit pages correctly, like the actual funnel pages themselves, you're pre-planning and pre-writing your email sequence. You pre-plan and pre-write any posts that you do want to put out on social media. If you have a community area or a Facebook group or something, obviously you're going to want to let them know about it. You also have to create promotional materials for yourself and all of your speakers. So you have to be decent with copywriting or decent with ChatGPT, one or the other or both. And so there's certain boxes that you're going to want to check to make sure it's planned well. And of course, you're going to want to remind your speakers, hey, your promotion day is coming up tomorrow. Make sure you send that email, right? Like everyone has to have follow through. And as the host, you have to have an extra high level of follow through to make up for other people who may forget, and you can gently remind them and get them back on track. So it's very much, as long as you're organized and you're disciplined in how you run your time and how you run your day, and you're using the right templates, you'll do great.
Yeah. I think that organization part and planning is such an important part of this, because I know that, especially early on, I think one summit in particular, I remember us agreeing to joining. It was so poorly organized. It almost seemed like the person who was organizing this expected the speakers to do the work. It was just such a poorly organized event that we knew that if we promoted this to our list, it would not look good on us. It would look like, yeah. And so we ended up backing out of that one because it was just such a cluster. And that's the other thing too. If you have something that's so poorly organized, if you get some people who have a large email list, that if they get the feeling like, if I promote this to my list, it's not going to be good, right? Then you're in trouble.
Oh yeah. So disorganization can trigger that red flag. But the other big thing I see that can trigger that red flag is if you have amateur looking graphics. You have to have a great graphics package. So if you're hosting one and you're not great at graphics, don't panic. Just hire someone to design them for you, because no one wants to drive traffic to an event that looks like an amateur made it, right? So we always give our clients graphic templates that are good. All they have to do is change the colors, change the layout of a couple tiny things, and boom, they're good to go. But if graphics are not your jam, hire someone to do your graphics. It'll be worth it in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely said no to some summits when I looked at their landing page and the graphics on there were really cringy. I'm like, no, this isn't going to look good for our brand to be associated with it.
Yeah, exactly. And because I'm so anal about those things and I'm so careful about those things, we've dotted all those I's and crossed all those T's in the program where we teach people summits. And so the number one thing we hear from our clients is it's their very first summit. So they're nervous. They're shaking in their boots. They're fearful that they're doing everything wrong. And half the time, half their speakers come back to them and say, by the way, everyone else's is such a mess. This one was so good, right? And that's how we like to roll. So
yeah, that's awesome. So having all of this amazing problem-aware traffic coming in, leads generated, how do you then take that summit, those summit leads, and actually sell your main offer?
Yeah. So I like to use what I call the hyperdrive funnel. I know I shared it with you guys a while back, and you had a whole bunch of calls that popped out of that too. But basically what we like to do, people sign up for the event for free. They're offered that VIP ticket. Regardless of whether they say yes or no, they end on a final thank you page that usually says something like, okay, it'll begin on X date. Here's the link to the Facebook group, or here's the link to the Zoom room if it's happening in Zoom. Here's the calendar of events or whatever. You have to offer people some sort of gift that makes them want to book a call. And if you do this smartly, we've had summits where we've brought in over 100 discovery calls flowing in just in those 2 weeks. And I think in that particular summit I'm thinking of, I think we ended up signing like 22 high ticket clients out of this in like 2 weeks. It was insane. So you have to offer them some sort of like exciting reason to apply to win something. So a lot of times, like you could say, let's say they pass on the VIP ticket and they land on the thank you page. You could say, hey, fill out this short survey for a chance to win a VIP ticket. And they're like, great, right? And then you set up your survey to basically screen out your ideal clients, right? Anyone who doesn't fit the ideal client profile, you'd send them to a page that's like, sorry, didn't win this time, see you later. If they do fit your ideal client profile, it sends them to a page that's like, congrats, you've won. Book this quick call to unlock your VIP ticket and your customized whatever strategy that comes with it. And so they have to book the call to claim the thing, whatever the thing is you promised them. And if you hit it off on that call and it seems like they could benefit from what you offer and they're getting great value from you, you invite them to the next step, of course. So that's how we like to kind of funnel people. A lot of times, typically there's a 2-week promotion period before the event actually happens. A lot of times we've signed all of our clients that we're going to sign before the event even starts. So, which is kind of nice because then you sit back and you're running it from that high place of like, wow, we just closed a bunch of clients, you know? So then your energy is great and everyone can feel that in the event, all the positive energy.
The number of booked calls you can get from that. And like you said, you shared that funnel with us. We've used it. And actually what we had was a free mini course and it worked like magic. If you're running paid ads to try to book discovery calls like that, on the very, very cheap end, you might pay $40 per booked call. On the higher end, people are paying, $150, $300. I've heard in some niches as high as $600, depending on the time of year and competition, all that. But even on the cheap end, to get 100 booked calls like that, $4,000. So you're saving $4,000 on the low end on ad spend just by adding this one step to your funnel. And like I said, we've seen it work. It's amazing.
Yeah. So not only are you not paying money on ads, you're earning $5 to $10 per lead as they flow in. So if you wanted to run paid ads later, there's your money for your ads, right? So yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. If you sell through sales calls, it's really a no-brainer, honestly.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, if you do Facebook ads, obviously you want to pixel those pages. Now you can retarget those people. You can create lookalike audiences from those people. Like, there's so many things that you can do when you put this funnel together. Everybody's warmed lists and things like that. And I love this strategy.
Yeah. And so I really wanted an organic lead generation strategy, but social media is a lot of day-to-day work. Even if you're batching things out week by week, you're filming and filming and filming and filming and writing posts, and it's so much on-camera work. Versus when you're planning a summit like this, sure, there's there's a couple of months leading up to the event where you're planning, but it's behind-the-scenes work. You're sitting there in no makeup in your pajamas, eating ice cream, building your summit pages, You're not plastered to a camera creating content. So for the introverts, it's kind of like their ideal dream come true. Sure, you're on camera as you're interviewing your various speakers, but that's it. And that typically all those interviews are done in like a 1-week time frame, maybe 2 weeks. That's a lot better than constant content creation 24/7,
You mentioned list size and people being ready for email marketing and all this kind of stuff. So is this a more advanced strategy? Is this for people who kind of have all of their other stuff together? Now they're just looking to add traffic or add more leads? Or is this something that new people can actually do?
Yeah, actually, I love this strategy because it's great for beginners Because if you're building from zero and you have an email list of zero, that's a painful spot to be. So if all you have to do is host your first summit and boom, you got 1,000 people on your email list and you're riding high, right? As long as you can stay organized and you're working with the right coach, you can absolutely nail it with a summit, even if you're brand new. But I really love this strategy for the more experienced builder and I would love to see more experienced builders leveraging this, because the more experienced person, they're already going to have a much better lead magnet because they've been running the reps for months or years, right? They already have funnels that are converting, offers that are converting. They might have high ticket offers as well as tiny offers. And generally speaking, a more experienced person is also going to have their sales funnel all set up and streamlined and perfect, right? So when a more experienced person gets their hands on this, they can absolutely clean up with sales and calls because they just have more practice. They have more reps in. So it's great for both. It's great for the beginner who's building from scratch, and you can't sell to an empty room. So you got to fill the room somehow, right? And the beginner can't afford ads. So they're left with either social media hustle or a summit, right? But for the more experienced builder, once you start building a support team, you have a VA, you have a graphic designer, etc., you can delegate 90% of the work to your team, and you just show up for the interview part and the team builds the rest. It's kind of a dream come true for the more experienced builder, because your team could be planning your summit and you could be off on the beach actually enjoying a vacation for once, right? So I really love that aspect of it too.
Yeah. And I think the other part about this that's really neat is that, yeah, it's a lot of work to set up and organize the first time. But once you've done that, once you've built out the funnels, you've built out the emails, you've built out, all this stuff, it's super easy to just duplicate that or reuse the stuff you've already used and do it a second time.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we do 4 a year. Each of our 4 has a different theme, a different name, so a different set of graphics. So the very first time we created the graphics packages for each one, it was a little bit of heavy lifting. But yeah, once you have the funnel built, all you have to do is clone it, clone the pages, pop the new graphics in, pop the speakers in, boom, it's done. The first one is always the hardest lift, but after that, replicating it is cake, actually.
Adrienne, this has been an amazing conversation. I think you've really perked some people's interest and got them rethinking if they're thinking about a summit should be a really good option for them. If they want to learn more about this process or anything or about you, where should they head?
I have a masterclass that I can give you. It's completely free. It goes a little bit deeper into the strategies and how you can leverage them in your business and the types of results that are possible. And it's called the Audience Explosion Masterclass. And so I'll make sure that you guys have access to that.
Awesome. We'll have that in the show notes and description. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, you guys.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.